The non-dual lectionary for the second Sunday of Pentecost in year C. This is Luke's telling of the healing of the Gerasene demoniac. Pretty well-known story. So let's get into it, and we'll see what we can grab out of this. So first, I'll read. Then they arrived at the region of the Gerasenes, which is opposite Galilee. As he stepped out on shore, a man from the city who had demons met him. For a long time he had not worn any clothes, and he did not live in a house, but in the tombs. When he saw Jesus, he cried out and fell down before him, shouting, "What have you to do with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? I beg you, do not torment me." For Jesus had commanded the unclean spirit to come out of the man. For many times it had seized him. He was kept under guard and bound with chains and shackles, but he would break the bonds and be driven by the demon into the wilds. Jesus then asked him, "What is your name?" He said, "Legion," for many demons had entered him. They begged him not to order them to go back into the abyss. Now there on the hillside a large herd of swine was feeding, and the demons begged Jesus to let them enter these. So he gave them permission. Then the demons came out of the man and entered the swine, and the herd stampeded down the steep bank into the lake and was drowned. When the swineherds saw what had happened, they ran off and told it in the city and in the country. Then people came out to see what had happened, and when they came to Jesus, they found the man from whom the demons had gone sitting at the feet of Jesus, clothed and in his right mind, and they became frightened. Those who had seen it told them how the one who had been possessed by demons had been healed. Then the whole throng of people of the surrounding region of the Gerasenes asked Jesus to leave them, for they were seized with great fear. So he got into the boat and returned. The man from whom the demons had gone out begged that he might be with him, but Jesus sent him away, saying, "Return to your home and declare how much God has done for you." So he went away, proclaiming throughout the city how much Jesus had done for him. Wow. As usual, a lot here that we could talk about. And let me start actually by saying, so Adyashanti's book, which is one of the baseline kind of inspirations for me, his book, Resurrecting Jesus, he has a whole chapter on this story, just this one story. It's like 14 pages long. So you can, this is three paragraphs and he writes 14 pages on it right there. And so he talks about some things that we might see in here. The idea that the demoniac is somebody who, he his name being Legion too, that he's got a split psyche in a way, right? All these different parts inside him, all these different voices, all these different urges, all these different drives. And that's really just, this is all audio again. That's really just an exaggerated version of what all of us are, right? Um, and so the healing here is actually that he's being brought into unity, the multitude is driven out, and in that way he actually almost becomes an enlightened person because by the end he's just stable and solitary. And I think we can definitely read it that way. Um, you can read this as a direct healing story, but what does it mean to be healing? Obviously we don't think of demons today, but a measure of um, the kind of psychological or ego healing that can come with a spiritual awakening. That's kind of what Adi is getting at mostly, I think, and there's definitely something there. I think what I'd like to focus on is, and again, you can look up so many different things about this story. The swine thing is very interesting by itself, right? That the demons don't want to go back into the abyss. That's very interesting. But one of the things I think is interesting here is the man, first of all, the man saying, "What have you to do with me? I beg you, do not torment me." The, the man isn't saying, "Please heal me," right? He's not saying, "Please drive these demons out of me." He's not, and again, if you don't even call them demons, he's not saying, "Please get rid of these things, these problems I have." He's saying, don't torment me. And then back at the bottom, right? When the people hear that he's been healed, they don't celebrate that this man who's been a huge trouble for everybody, they've tried to lock him up and he keeps running away. They don't celebrate it. They become frightened. And then again, later they ask Jesus to leave, for they were seized with great fear. And I think that to me is very interesting. That to me points at something that I think happens And again, kind of the external, the outside is the inside, but a common experience for all of us. And then we can also talk about external and internal. But that's that we all will often try to choose what's comfortable, what's familiar over what's uncomfortable. And it's in the spiritual journey, right? In any kind of, if you want to call this healing, if you want to call it wholeness, if you want to call it enlightenment or awakening, if you want to call it, going beyond self in particular, right? If we're talking about something like, the self being transcended or dissolved or just realized as being insubstantial, we will often, become frightened, and we will try to choose and cling on to the familiar, even though it's bad, over the unfamiliar, uncomfortable, even if it could be good. And so here we have, this man being whose whole life is in shambles because of these demons. And he doesn't say, Jesus, please heal me. He says, what do you want to do? Get away. You're tormenting me. And then even after it's the healing, right? The people around are going, who is this? I'm very scared of this. Not, this is so great. This is strange. It's not what I want. It's not what I'm familiar with, right? So that I think is just a really interesting part of this story, and something that we can kind of take away as like a big less, again, the mythological telling, but a big lesson that we can all take to heart is like, to what extent am I choosing what's comfortable and familiar? And again, if we're talking about no self, non-dual recognition, there's something that's beyond our choosing anyway, right? But just kind of watch and notice, right? Like, oh, look at what's happening here. That the familiar is being chosen again, right? We can be compassionate towards ourselves in that. We can be compassionate towards others in that, um, even as we may be practicing or looking or feeling that drive to go beyond. Because the man in the end, right, does go beyond. Um, you know, he and when he finally does realize it, right, when he does come to the end there, he says, "I want to come with you, Jesus," right? He wants to hold on to that, and Jesus says, "No, no, no, no. You're good. You've got what you need. Go and go and declare how much God has done for you. You're enough right there." So yeah, and again, we could talk about so much more with the story, right? There's a lot in here, but I that's one thing I just wanted to glean out of this, that I think, in this telling, just really interesting, right? We've got this healing story, that's something that's, really good for everybody, and yet nobody seems to want it. And we can just recognize that, hey, I'm doing that right now. That is a mythological true telling of what is. My guess is you're doing it. I'm doing it right now. And yet at the same time, even with a little bit of that recognition, we can hold it with a little more ease, and we can allow what is at a deeper level to a little bit more readily emerge, and that recognition to find at least a little bit of a little bit easier path.